The strain is over, but we're just getting started here on post-show recaps. I'm Josh Wigler. I am joined today by my booby. It's very special that he's here today. It's Antonio Mazzaro. What's up, booby?
I made a kishka for you, my friend.
Really?
Yes, that's what boobies do, I understand.
I didn't know.
Oh, I had heard that from a vaudevillian show long ago.
Okay, well, that's neither here nor there. Antonio, as always, is my co-host here on The Strain Live here on post-show recaps. Antonio, how's everything going?
I felt like I was a little out of focus there for a second, but other than that, it's going pretty good. I'm not coming down with any coughs. I don't feel like I'm, sustaining any viruses in my body.
Nobody's gotten any, worms on you recently?
Not any more so than normal, no. Not anything out of the ordinary.
How often do you get worms on you?
You don't want to know.
Is it a lot?
Well, Kentucky boy, so it happens from time to time.
Unless it was part of your job, I would say even one worm a week would probably be a lot.
Yeah, if you farm or garden at all, you get some worms on you.
That's fine, yeah, but you're not a farmer or a gardener.
Maybe not as a job, but that doesn't mean I'm not as a hobby.
You're a hunter, Antonio.
Yeah, well, that's true. I'd rather be a hunter than a farmer or a gardener.
Well, speaking of hunters, did this show just introduce some vampire hunters?
Yeah, what's going on there? Cold blade hands?
Cold blade hands, I think, is what we are officially calling this guy right now.
What is up? I mean, and they had their own weapons. They had their hoods. This was some pretty awesome stuff there.
These are the guys that Abraham needs to hook up with, I think. I think when Abraham says, I have a new plan, it should be, call those guys. Call the vampire hunters. These are the people you want on your side.
Yeah, and what's funny is that whole episode, this whole episode, I was just wondering, why do we have all these kids? Who cares about Joan's kids and their nanny? This is just really ridiculous. We had 3 or 4 separate scenes with them, and then it all was to set up our buddy Coldblade Hands and his posse, which was incredible. So it was all worth it.
It was incredible. I really enjoy The Strain. I think this show is very fun. Sometimes it's not that fun. Sometimes it shies away from just being goofy and over the top. I think whenever it's being goofy and over the top, that's when this show is at its very best. I think that's what TV needs right now, is a goofy, over-the-top vampire show with horrific monsters, horrific Guillermo del Toro creatures, and I love when this show brings that level of nonsense to the table. And I think that introducing these vampire-slaying vampires, big thumbs up from Wigler. I am a big fan of this development. This is great.
Yeah, and he kind of had this weird, non-vampire, vampire tooth thing going on, where his teeth kind of all came down to a pointed V, which I thought was interesting. How does one acquire a mouth like that, and to what natural purpose is it done?
He goes to a very specific orthodontist, I think.
Dr. Acula, is that right?
I think that's right.
No, but yeah, it's very interesting. Maybe he had an appliance that he put in when he was a little kid to get that tooth really right. His parents
the palate expander.
Yeah, a little palate expander. I have some friends who have had that done, and it's not pleasant. So this guy's really gone through a lot for that.
The palate expander is really close to my concept of medieval torture.
Well, what else could it be but that? It's a device you put in the roof of your mouth and just push your teeth out day by day. And then there's a key that you turn to make it wider. I literally had a friend who did this, and he was being mocked for it. Now, the poor kid was being tortured. It was like Mr. Bates on Downton Abbey when he put the device on his leg to try to get rid of his limp.
Yeah, it's not great. I feel like that's one thing that really sucks about being a kid with bad teeth. I had braces, but I didn't have to have the palate expander. That would have been a bridge too far for me. I think I would have just said, no, I'm okay.
Dental bridge too far. Nice. I see what you're doing.
Yeah, dental bridge too far. Well, we are live here on post-show recaps. If you guys are watching us on YouTube, thanks for that. We always appreciate when you guys are along for the ride, and Antonio is monitoring your comments. And if you've got anything you want to ask us live here on the show, you are more than welcome to do so by tweeting at post-show recaps or tweeting the hashtag PS Recaps, or tweeting to Antonio at AC Mazzaro, 2 Z's, 1 R, and I'm at Round Howard, like Ron Howard, but rounder. We're actually going to be here for a while if you guys are watching us live today. We were not able to recap The Strain last night on Sunday as we normally do, nor were we able to recap The Leftovers on Sunday nights, which we used to do. The Leftovers, our podcast for The Leftovers Live, have moved to Monday afternoons recently, so we're keeping that date intact. That's going to be at 4 p.m. Eastern today, which means we got to get moving on on the Strain if we wanna make good time on the Leftovers. So we're doing a doubleheader here, as you can see on my door, if you are watching us live on video, and we're gonna get right into it. So if you guys like what we're doing with the vampire shenanigans of the Strain, maybe you're going to like what we're doing with the depressing shenanigans of the Leftovers, and that's going to be following this show immediately, and we will tweet out the link to that show. We will have to stop down this show and start up a new one in order to make it happen, but it's going to be a long ride today. Antonio, are you ready?
I'm ready. I love riding with you.
I love riding with you, too. And you know who else I love riding with?
Tell me.
Chief from Battlestar Galactica.
Yes. This is the best thing about the show being shot in Vancouver, is you get all of these great...
I believe it's Toronto, actually.
Toronto, not Vancouver. In Canada. You've got all these great Canadian actors who have popped up in other genre shows that shoot in Canada to save money. So our boy Chief popping up right away. He's put on some pounds, too. I mean, not that I can talk, but our Chief's packed on some LBs.
Nor I, but he definitely looks heftier than... He was always a big guy, but now he kind of looks like he could, forget Vince D'Onofrio. This guy could have been the Kingpin.
Yeah, he's like Chief Tyrrell, but rounder. And he's
Exactly.
definitely wearing a Chief Tyrrell suit, like an Egger suit.
Yeah, he's filled out. He's filled out a little bit.
Puffy. And let's not criticize the guy, Aaron Douglas. He's a great dude. One of my favorite characters on VSG. So to see him pop up here was great. But I don't know about you, but from the minute I saw him and figured out what his role was, I pretty much felt like he was doomed.
I thought that he was doomed as well. The only thing that was keeping me from thinking that he was totally doomed is the fact that they have Aaron Douglas on the Strain. And not that he's an A-list superstar or anything like that, but he's a recognizable actor from a very beloved genre show, Battlestar Galactica. We're not going to spoil who Chief is or what he is involved in and what he gets up to on Battlestar Galactica in case you haven't seen that show, because you should watch that show. That show is very good. But he's obviously a memorable character from BSG, and I kind of thought that he was now being introduced as like maybe he's going to be some kind of money man who can bankroll the Abraham side of things if he's going to get sucked into it if he's forced to kill his wife. So I wasn't sure. I didn't know where it was going. Of course, basically we meet this guy. He has just come off of like a 20-hour flight from somewhere. I don't know if we catch where he was coming in from. Did you get that detail, Antonio?
No, definitely not. He obviously was worn down and caught his wife on the news and said that a girl. So he didn't seem like he was out of the picture. He seemed like he was pretty connected to his family, but he'd been out of the country or somewhere. So yeah, he was pretty worn out, and I don't know if that was his bar or his country club or whatever that was, but he just walked right in and poured himself a drink.
It was certainly a country club that he's either a member of or the owner, or just maybe he's ballsy enough to just walk into an abandoned country club at night and start drinking their alcohol. I kind of think not. But he goes in there, he starts drinking. He gets a phone call from the nanny. Did we catch the nanny's name?
I can't remember her name. I want to say it's Rose, but I don't think that's right.
Let's just call her Fran the nanny.
Franny.
The nanny named Fran.
Franny the nanny.
Stop! So the nanny named Fran calls Mr. Luss, and he basically says, "Listen, we'll get the kids back in the morning. I'm so exhausted. I'm not coming to you. I'm going home." She's like, "Don't go home. Something really bad is happening with your wife. I promise you, you don't want to be there." And she's right, but of course he doesn't listen. He's just been on a plane for 19 hours. He's not going to go home. So he goes home, and what happens, Antonio?
Nothing good happens. He gets, first of all, it's a shout out to some of our commenters here. Jeffrey Trotter said on YouTube that he felt bad for Chief getting the worst/dumbest cabbie in all of NYC. And I think that's about true. He gets a terrible cabbie who...
It's a bad cabbie.
When he pulls up to the house, he sees some no good business going on basically in the area surrounding the house. He sees someone he recognizes but that has been turned. And so he knows something's up, such that he runs back to the cab and gets in and says, "Drive away." Only about 60 times does he say this.
Yeah, and the guy's like, "Oh, drive away or shoot these guys with a gun."
Yeah, or let me just get out this giant revolver or whatever it is, 45 that I have, and try to blow them away, which I guess is good in theory, but it really doesn't work in practice because he only gets one down and then he's pretty much mobbed over by another one, and our boy Chief is in a bad way here.
Yeah, he's panicked. So he gets out of there. He runs away. He runs inside. He sees the silhouette of his wife walking throughout the house. He's all like, "Joan, thank God you got to call the cops. Something crazy's going out there." And then she steps into the light, and we see this is not the Terry Bauer that we used to know.
No, now she's just
This
somebody
woman
that
has
wants to
changed.
drink. She's just a bloodlusting vampire, whatever these things are. It's horrible. She's really fallen apart.
Yeah, she's really fallen apart. And I had kind of complained in the past that we weren't seeing enough of Joan's transformation, but I actually thought it was pretty effective here when she, turns the corner and shows up, and she's missing a lot of her hair, and she's pale, and she's clearly gone full vampire.
You
I
think
thought
she's gone, you think she's gone smooth?
she's definitely gone smooth. Of course,
I
she's
think
gone
so
smooth.
too. There's no doubt about it.
I
That's
don't
and
think that.
that's
I feel like they can't show that on TV though.
really so they can show Gabriel Bolivar, but not Joan here.
I get the feeling that there's an easier time showing male gone smooth than female gone smooth on
Than
television.
FGS. I think you're probably right.
So I don't think that we would have seen Joan Lusk go smooth here, but I think we could assume that she went smooth.
Ken, yes, Barbie, no. I've got it.
Yeah. Basically, I think you can go Ken doll, you can't go Barbie doll.
That's fair. That's fair.
But she's gone smooth, and it doesn't look like it's going to be good for Chief. And then we smash to the credits, and wow, that was a really fun opening to this episode, I thought.
Yeah, it was a great blow up. I mean,
It's
just
like a great little horror movie at the start of the episode.
yeah, like almost not quite a monkey's paw scenario, but somebody returning back to a house where they don't necessarily need to be, and some very horrible things happening therein. And in that regard, it was a great little short vignette with a new character we hadn't met, who by the end of that we had feeling was going to meet his demise immediately.
It was pretty good. And I mean, there's still some stuff that I think we could talk about with Chief later on. But for now, we go to Harlem, and we're about to hear what Abraham's plan is. When we last left these guys, Abraham says to F and to Nora, "You guys are ready. That's great. I have a new plan." Does he have a new plan?
I didn't really hear it articulated if he did.
Yeah, I think his new plan basically amounts to we're going to find the master and we're going to kill him, except it's close to we're going to find the master and we're going to kill him.
And we're going to kill him, and the others will die because the master has died. Yeah, this is
You understand him much better than I do, I think, Antonio. I certainly understand your impression of Abraham Satrakian better than Abraham Satrakian himself.
Well,
I love this guy, but you really got to listen up. And I was having some hearing issues over the weekend, so it was extra hard for me to understand what this guy was saying this week.
well, like I said, there's an octogenarian Jewish man in me somewhere, and whatever part of that is in me is on that same wavelength where I can pick it up. So I don't feel so bad about it. But I think it's just welcome to the new plan, same as the old plan.
Right, pretty much. And, F has kind of had it with this. He reasons, we've got the video, let's get this in front of the public. And
Speaking of same as the old plan, that's all F's been talking about forever.
I know, they're both really clinging to the past. They don't really want to embrace anything new.
Why are they even there? Like, they're just wanting to do the same things.
I think the new plan should have been, let's all go to Vermont.
Yes. And have ourselves a snack.
This whole thing is done. Let's go to Vermont.
And all of a sudden you find out Shonda Rhimes is writing this, and it's a very similar plan to what President Fitz wants on Scandal. They just want to go to Vermont.
Would we be getting as many shots of Abraham and F just smoldering at each other with iconic music playing in the background?
I think that's where we would be seeing a lot of that, and we would be seeing some Nora shipping going on. There would be some more cliffhangers. We had a good one today, though.
The Straindle. I would watch that show.
Straindle? That sounds like a body part that I don't want to wash.
I feel like Olivia Pope's PR team would not be bad in the world of The Strain, except I think that they'd be really good on Eichhorst's team.
Yeah, they'd be working for Stoneheart, for sure, to cover it all up.
Yeah, because Olivia Pope tends to take on some shiesty clients.
Yes, and we've got some actors that play roles within Olivia Pope's team who are shiesty themselves.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Play out real well.
Well, no longer, I believe, but that's a podcast.
This podcast for another podcast.
That's a podcast for another podcast. But yeah, I'm into the idea of the Straindle. Do you think we would get angles on F to cover up the fact that he's actually pregnant?
He would just be standing behind chairs a lot of the time.
Yeah, just like from like the chest up for the rest of the season.
F acquires the desk job in Abraham's vampire stalking empire. Yeah, that doesn't really seem like it would fit. I don't know about you, but there was also some House of Cards crossover in this episode. So they're borrowing from the very best that on TV right now for shows that they would probably seek to emulate.
Well, I remember House of Cards crossover from The Leftovers, which we'll talk about in a podcast in about 45 minutes. So you'll have to point out the House of Cards cameo in this episode. I think I may have missed it, other than, obviously, Corey Stoll.
When we get to the subway platform, we'll be there.
Okay, great. So enough of the Straindle, although that's a great concept, frankly. So they're talking a bit about what they want to do, and F finally says, okay, I'm going to just take the master purely as a semantic term. So if we kill this thing, it's going to stop the whole plague. That doesn't make sense to me. None of that makes sense. And Abraham kind of barks back, this isn't a logic problem. This is a you problem. You always want to be in control, and these guys are just butting heads. The Ephraim bromance is kind of hitting a wall right here.
Yeah, if you're shipping Ephraim, this was not a good week for you. In general and in specific. F in specific, this episode really takes a lot of crap from people about being self-centered and about having this hero complex. And I know we had seen some evidence of that in previous episodes, and we know what's going on the home front for F is pretty out of control. So of course, he's seeking to control as much as he can outside of that. But that said, it's odd that Abe is really so attacking the only guy who's there to help him. And he said last week, you're both ready. So if F is ready, then all of a sudden next week he's not ready. It's all very confusing. But you can put yourself on F's shoes and not get the science of it. But there are freaking vampires walking around, for crying out loud. Science no longer makes sense. We're well without the realm of science.
Well, not for nothing. I will say... on Wigler Wig Watch this week, that wig not looking good in this scene. Looking like it's about to slip off, and maybe F had a little bit of something else going on here. Maybe he was a little bit concerned about his hair. Bad hair day for F.
Yeah, Mary Ellen Rainier Olson commented on our YouTube page about F after that scene keeping the beanie on all of the night, and maybe the producers are having second thoughts about the wig. We did see it in this scene, and it looked pretty brutal.
It doesn't look good.
No. But we had another comment here, and when we get to the end of the episode, possible future for that hair, I think, has been surmised by some people on our YouTube page. So we'll see how that goes.
Ooh, I'm excited to dig into that. Well, before we talk about any possible futures, although we should say very quickly that I believe they arrive at the idea that they're going to go find Jim. They're going to find Sean Astin's character, and they're going to use him to get to Eichhorst.
Jim Bate. Yep.
That's what they've decided at this point.
Which is about all Jim deserves, to be honest with you.
Oh, yeah. Jim Bate is fine.
Yep.
So that's going to be their future plan. But first, we go back to the past. We get another flashback that takes us back to Poland in 1944 in the concentration camp where Abraham first met Eichhorst. And these scenes are really good. That's the thing about this show is I think it does Goofy really, really well, but I think it has these kind of really haunting scenes between really great actors that work really well as well. And I'm blanking on his name, but the man who plays Eichhorst is just phenomenal. That character is just completely dazzling me in every single way. He's just horrifying. I can't stop thinking about how horrifying this character is.
Yeah, he really just is chewing scenery as a Nazi captain, and that's something that is easy to do, but he's playing it in such a way that it's somewhat malevolent and yet also somewhat benevolent. He really is playing this scene so that you don't know, ultimately, this particular flashback scene, he finds the hand of Miriam, and it's this really beautifully carved talisman that someone has put under their bunk, and he wants to know who did it. Well, until someone says they did it, he's shooting people in the head and killing people. So our boy Abraham steps up and says, I did it. And then from that point on, Eichhorst is almost in a bromance with him. He's really admiring his talents, really complimentary of him. There's a lot of kind of interesting...
Did you get a sexual interest vibe at all from Eichhorst?
I did not get it. Let's put it that way. I didn't think that was the predominant element of the scene, but I thought that Eichhorst
There's something kind of sensual about the way he was.
He was a little bit weird about it, and I couldn't tell if this was just this weird German fetishist type that he was playing, or if he was playing something a little more on the line. And obviously we haven't seen the last of these stories, so we don't know exactly where their relationship goes. But the Third Reich is on the way down. At the time, it's 1944, so some fit's going to have to hit the shan, as you like to put it, for this relationship to kind of culminate in where we know it ends up, which is some very dangerous places. So I don't know exactly what's going to happen. I don't know exactly how the relationship is going to evolve. Do you want to just stay on these scenes and knock them all out in a row?
If that's what you would like to do.
Yeah, I think that's probably easiest, right?
Yeah, so let's keep going.
So what do we have next is that we cut to Abraham is still really focused on stealing silver. He's thinking about the silver. He knows there's this creature.
Because he's heard all of the stories from his bubby.
I've heard it from my bubby. Yes. And Nora had an interesting explanation earlier in the episode, by the way, when she says silver interferes with sulfur bonds in bacteria. So we get a little bit of a science behind why this particular strain might actually be affected by silver. But in the past, Abraham is noticing the silver. Then we've got, unfortunately, at this point, Eichhorst has laid out to Abraham this plan. And he says, I want you to build this thing, right, with your skills. And, of course, it's the coffin.
Yeah. So we find out that Abraham is basically he's the carpenter behind the coffin.
What's weird about that to me is that if you'll recall the first flashback episode, and this is a continuity thing, I think, Abraham did not want to step up and say he was a carpenter because he said, I've only had 6 weeks as an apprentice. And I believe that was him who said that and not his companion or his brother or whoever that is. But if he's only had 6 weeks and yet he's a master in terms of this intricate work, there's a lot of interesting going on with Abraham, or it's just a little bit of a continuity error there. But he obviously is skilled enough to carve the hand of Miriam very well. And
might just be a very talented boy.
He's just a very talented fellow.
By Abraham.
I'm not even Jewish-ish, so I feel a little weird trying to pull it off. So I'm just going to let you handle those duties here. But
yeah, it's okay if I do it. They're my people. I'm allowed to.
Yeah, and I'm just a dentist who's seeking to convert. But it's a little
jokes,
weird
right?
for the jokes, just for the jokes.
Yeah.
It's weird because there's this weird relationship, as you point out, between Eichhorst and Abraham. And later on in the episode, Eichhorst is all drunk on something and stumbles in to Abraham's work, and he tells him to pick up.
And this is where I feel like
he's
getting a little handsy.
Well, and he also puts his crotch right in Abraham's face and unzips his zipper.
Oh, I missed that. Is that true?
And that is 100,000% true. Right in his face, the crotch is there, and he unzips his zipper. Then, and only then, does he turn heel and go over to the chamber pot and urinate inside. Which, by the way, maybe it wasn't a chamber pot, maybe it was just a bucket, because I don't think Nazi bunker or concentration camp is equal to medieval times, but maybe it is. Maybe it was a chamber pot. So, anyway, yeah, he unzipped right in his face.
He goes to the privy?
Right. He was a little bit of privy to that knowledge of what the history of the privies were, and you got to be a little fearful of that, knowing what you're getting into, because winter is coming for the Third Reich.
Well, it certainly seems that way, and that's kind of the conversation that they get into here, right? Where they're talking about is this where they have the conversation about?
It is.
About the nature of the Third Reich and what if this Reich falls and another rises from its ashes? Yeah.
Well, so Eichhorst starts talking about the village in Romania where Abe has made his life, and says there's a beautiful Roman castle there, and that city's been conquested by all these people. And then they start talking about the Third Reich, and Abraham really is getting a little ballsy. I mean, one of my rules of life is never talk politics with a drunk Nazi.
That's a good rule.
I mean, this is a rule of thumb. Like, put it right on there, because you don't want to do it. It's just not talking politics drunk. Period. Bad idea. With a Nazi, really bad idea.
Yeah, that's a good call. And probably especially if you're Jewish and talking to
in a concentration camp. Yeah.
Maybe bad. It might not be great.
But, our buddy Abraham, never known for his tact or his ability to control his tongue. So it's nice to know this is not a trait he developed in his old age, this inability to really hold back or be tactful. He really is not holding back here, perhaps because he can sense that Eichhorst has some kind of admiration for him or some sort of benevolent and not just malevolent way of treating him. But at any rate, it's really poor what this really devolves to, because it devolves to Eichhorst talking about how Hitler was democratically elected and people want to be controlled, and there's the nobility of a victim. Yeah, well, you got to leave your family behind. And then he gives Abraham this really crazy choice. He says, here, carve, or here's my gun. I'm going to put my hands over my head, and you can just take my gun. You can probably get it off of me, and if you die, you die. You're going to die anyway, so you may as well be the master of your destiny. And what does Abraham do? He carves it up.
Carves it up.
Yeah, so I don't know. What do you think about that whole scene and how that played out?
I don't know. I think that they're really. I'm interested in what they're doing with the relationship here. What I'm really interested in is, so what's Ichorst's connection to the Master and the vampires at this point?
I don't think we rightly know that at this point. He's not a vampire.
He's not a vampire yet. I think that's pretty clear.
And Abe has said that he wasn't a vampire when I met him. We've seen him outside, so we know he's not a vampire. He's referring to him by his number, like we saw in the earlier interview.
8230385.
Yes. Oh, I made you that. We can see somewhere in there that somebody is probably letting the Master into the barracks, or the Master's letting himself in. But I think there's some form of knowledge of what's happening. I don't.
Otherwise, why would he commission the coffin?
Right. Well, that's a very good point.
Wrong word. Command the coffin.
That's a very good point, and that proves it as far as it goes. We also talked earlier about how when they're making bodies, somebody's disappearing the bodies, and there aren't necessarily just wandering Jew vampire zombies walking around the camp. So
that we know of.
That we know of. Somebody may have these vampires penned up somewhere. They may be trying to use them in battle. I have no idea what their goal is here, but they were supposed to be this. Clearly, I think is some sort of almost like Hydra-like offshoot where there's supposed to be some kind of ascendancy of the Master from the Master race.
Yeah, oh, that's interesting.
Because that's what Ichorst is really saying, that what if there was a new thing that's rising? And so Ichorst is kind of like an inside agent, I think, working with the Master to perhaps, as we see what they're doing in modern times, try to bring about this Master's control of the world. I think they're doing it within the realm of Nazi Germany.
So he's been driving at this for a while.
I think so, and I don't know. We know there was some issue with something that happened with Abraham tossing a body in the North Sea. We know Abraham's been at this a while. We know there's a heart that he keeps in a jar that is reminiscent of somebody. So there's a lot of story to tell here. But at this point, Ichorst is clearly working with the Master, as you pointed out. And to what purpose? It's not 100% clear.
Vampire Hans Landa.
I think that's pretty good. That's a pretty good observation.
I mean, Ichorst really has this Christoph Waltz thing about him. I think that's why I like him so much. I don't want to call him the poor man's Hans Landa. I mean, Hans Landa is obviously a character unto himself. He's just a ridiculously crafted character, and Ichorst probably has a ways to go before he reaches those heights. But there's something I just feel there's a kinship between these two performances.
Yeah, there really is, and it's like I said, it's this combination of malevolent and benevolent. There's a little bit of a smile and a little bit of kind treatment, but there's a lot of evil and a lot of anger lurking right behind that. And it's not 100% clear whether you're getting the bull or the horns on a daily basis. And I think that makes it somewhat worse that someone's striking. But you think back to that first scene in Inglourious Bastards in the cabin where he's being so nice and friendly about it, but he's the smiling Nazi. And that's just, again, Nazi is Nazi. Whether they're smiling, whether they're being kind, whether they're being benevolent, they're freaking Nazis. And so you've got this lurking behind everything that Ichorst is doing. Whether he seems to be being nice or not, 5 minutes before that, he shot somebody in cold blood right in the head.
Right. Right. Yeah, can't forget that. Just that little detail.
And they're in a concentration camp, for crying out loud. Yeah. So all of these things are really horrible things that are going on, and yet he's kind of smiling, like I said, chewing scenery, and is really trying to articulate these points and treat this guy as an intellectual equal. Like, I want to talk to you about politics. I want to debate with you. When I got drunk, I decided I wanted to come in here and see you and talk to you about this. So there's a lot of weirdness going on between the two of them, and I think Ichorst, like you said, the guy's just killing it.
I think he's got the hots for Abraham.
I think he might. I think the unzip in the face, if you went back and watched that again, you might be pretty rattled to notice that. I immediately jumped out at me like, what is going on here?
Even with missing that, I was getting some serious vibes from this scene. It seemed like he was kind of eyeing Abraham. It looked like he was coming in for a booty call. A booby call. Is there anything more to talk about with the 1944 storyline? I mean, we know at the very end of it, the big reveal is that Abraham is carving the coffin. So that's big, and I'm sure that's going to come into play in the weeks ahead.
Yeah, and obviously that weighs on Abraham in the future, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Even though he was forced to do it, he did actively make the choice and chose to carve. So this is a guy who has some demons weighing him down, of the otherworldly variety, but of the internal variety. And so this is good characterization for Abraham, regardless of anything else. It doesn't really drive the story forward, except to say Abraham's a pretty complicated guy who has seen and done some shit. And I think there's a lot more to come.
So let's go from this prison to another prison, back in the present time. We can just wrap up all of the stuff with Gus here. I think he's only in 2 scenes. They're fairly standard as far as having to spread your buttocks for police officers goes, I guess. But yeah, he's getting checked in prison because he was arrested for what happened with the medical examiner when he bashed in that guy's brains, and nobody wants to listen to him that they're a vampire series. Says there's some weird shit going down out there. And the cop, in what I thought was the line of the episode, was, "This is New York City. Weird shit goes down all the time."
Yeah, I wanted to know what you thought about that. Yeah,
it's true. This is a fair point.
And this, this is a bend forward and expose your buttocks type situation.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the vampire situation is a little weirder than normal, but people claiming that I just clubbed a vampire to death probably isn't the first time that's been said in New York City.
That probably happens on a daily basis.
I would guess that that's probably true. And so beyond that, Gus basically gets thrown into the big cell with everybody else, and he's, his buddy Felix is on the ground. He's sick. He's hacking. We, the audience, know that Felix was infected with a worm at the end of last week's episode, which means it's only a matter of time before he turns all the way, but nobody else on the show knows that yet. So it's getting bad, and Gus is protecting his friend. He beats the snot out of this guy who refuses to give up his seat. So I thought that was pretty cool. I like Gus. Gus is good. Now that Gus seems to be close to a vampire storyline, I think Gus is going to get really fun.
Yeah, depending on how long he's in there, that whole cell might turn, and it might be a pretty brutal situation for Gus that he's barely able to escape from.
Well, that guy's cut. He is ripped. He's jacked, and he can pop people with just his fists. I feel like, and he killed the medical examiner vampire, with nothing more than just like one swift clubbing to the head. So I feel like even if it's Gus versus all of the people in that cell as vampires, I don't know. I feel like Gus could do all right.
Yeah, if anybody can handle it hand to hand, it would be Gus. They've worked that into the story well enough that I can expect to see him just beating the crap out of some vampires. But those 6 feet tongues don't lie, man. That's in a cell like that. It'd be pretty hard. He'd have to not only be skilled with the fist, he'd have to know the ways of the Matrix.
He might know the Matrix.
He might. We saw some Matrix action later in the episode. I'm sure we'll talk about here.
Oh yeah, of course has a little bit of an Agent Smith thing going on.
Yeah, there's that for sure.
So I don't think there's much more to say about Gus. It's a slow burn, but I think it is burning brighter. I think it's getting closer and closer to being a really good storyline. So we'll see. To be continued on Gus. I think let's get all of the stuff with F and Jim and all those people out of the way before we go to the Lust house. What do you say?
Yeah, let's do it.
So they go and they visit Jim in Greenpoint, and this is when Jim is with his wife, who we know is sick. She's dying. That's why Jim, Sean Astin's character, has gone ahead and done all of this, double dealing and working with Stoneheart and working against the best interests of the CDC and, frankly, humanity at large, is to, help his wife survive what's happening. He wants to get her the treatment that she deserves, and he's willing to do anything that he has to in order to get that to happen. So they're about to go on a plane to leave New York. Now, are they basically running away, or are they going to the research that's going to happen for her?
I mean, I think that, yeah, he is running away because he knows what's up. She's going to the research center and wants him to come with her, and he knows he'll be running away from some serious shit that's about to go down.
Right. So, it's not great. Moly, you know how I feel about moles. And we find out how F feels about moles a few weeks back when he punched Jim in the face, but now he's looking to him for help. And so F and Nora and Abraham, they show up at the apartment and they basically say, "We need you to take us to your boss." And Abraham asks him to describe the man. He says, "Describe the German." And Jim describes him as he's about 45 years old. He has really waxy skin. He has gray hair that might be a toupee, and I think at that point F is sort of shaking in his boots a little bit because he's got a secret of his own. But we know that there's this long and complicated history between Abraham and Eichhorst, and this is when he says, when I first met him, he was human, but just as monstrous. And we basically get from Abraham, listen, we're going to need to use you to get to this guy, to get to Eichhorst.
Yeah, and it's interesting because one thing we didn't hit from the flashback when we talked it out was that there was one scene where they were talking about natural talents, and this is one of the kind of the flirtmance elements of what was going on. And Eichhorst was admiring Abraham's natural talents for carving and saying he didn't have any talents, or really that he could never do that, and he failed in woodshop and had to cheat to pass it in 3rd grade or whatever.
Right.
And Abraham says, well, I'm sure you have your talents. And Eichhorst says, oh, yeah, I have my talents. Managing people is my talent. Picking the right person for the right job. So it's interesting that Abraham is kind of using some of those same talents here with knowing that Jim can be used in this way. He seems to be kind of above the fray a little bit when it comes to these kind of hand-to-hand actions with this guy, because we get to the station, right? Jim stays, and the whole thing is really kind of just like Keystone Cops.
It's very fun, this scene. This is going to end in one of my favorite shots of the entire series so far. We need to talk out through some of what happens at Grand Central before we get there, but it's going to be it's so funny when he grabs the train.
It's fantastic.
It's really, really good. But yeah, so he shows up, and Jim, all he has is a knife. He would have preferred a gun. And I think I think Abraham says, "Trust me, silver this is what's gonna do it for you." Yeah, Jim said he wanted. I was hoping for something more in the gun family, but no. All he has is a knife, and all he has is his nerve, such as it is. And he basically calls out Eichhorst, and Eichhorst calls him right back out, saying, and how did they lure him out? They called the Stoneheart group and said, show up at Grand Central with all this money, or else I'm squealing.
Yeah, they called Eldridge, and it's interesting because we still have Eldridge has not had his end of the bargain lived up to, because he's sitting there wanting to find out if his body's going to reject this organ that he didn't even feel that he needed to have donated. He clearly was promised some sort of eternal life or elixir that would save him, and he has not been given that. We haven't seen or heard from our boy Eichhorst at the Stoneheart group since that moment, and yet here he is. The lights dim, and he walks right in and says, "Oh, what's going on? I'm glad you're ready to talk to me." And Eldridge sends our boy Curtis away, and there's a lot of talking, and the upshot is
it gets a little racial.
The upshot is that it gets a little bit racial, and it's no fun for anybody. And we've got Jim's message played by Eldridge for Eichhorst, and at that moment, Eichhorst knows. He knows what's up.
He knows what's up. He knows, nah, it's not Sean Astin. That guy doesn't have the nerve. It's the Jew.
Right. He's just dropping hard J's left and right.
Makes me very uncomfortable when he drops the hard J's, I'll tell you that.
Me too, because I'm not 100% sure when it's appropriate to use or not. So he's just dropping hard J's out there inappropriately, I think.
I think you could describe a Jewish person as being Jewish. I don't think you want to call that person the Jew at any point.
I think you never want to put the in front of it, period. You might say like if you were referring to somebody as somebody is of a Jewish religion, they're a Jew. Like they're a Catholic, they're a Muslim, they're a Jew. But I don't think you ever want to say the Jew. I don't think that's ever a good.
It's not good. You don't want to do that. I'll tell you my preference would be don't call me the Jew. If you could avoid it, I would appreciate it.
Don't even call you TJ. Like anything with the J in there is just no good business. And this is a Nazi we're talking about. Again, Nazi. We cannot forget this.
Yes, he is a Nazi, so it's true to character, and I think that's part of what makes him a very, compelling character. Is he's very true to form. So he shows up at Grand Central and he calls Jim out and he says, "I know this wasn't you. It's the Jew. I can smell him. The Jew is here."
Yeah, and he's gonna have a really hard time in New York City if he can specifically smell Jewish people.
Also, pretty impressive how he gets around, I think. And this was one of the questions that I had before this episode. How does Eichhorst keep showing up at places when it's broad daylight outside? He's pretty ballsy. So I guess he uses the tunnels he uses subway tunnels to get around and probably goes around through sewers and such. But, we saw him at the police station back in, I think it was the second episode, or maybe the third episode of the series when he visited Abraham there. Now we see him at Grand Central in broad daylight. And, not for nothing, if he just, takes one wrong turn and hits like a random burst of sunlight into Grand Central, it's not going to be good for him.
Yeah, not good at all. And I don't know if this is a guy who's lived in New York City or if he's just come to New York City. He
strikes me, he seems New York savvy.
He's a little New York savvy.
I think he's been here before. Not a native, but he's adopted the city as his own.
He knows if street comes before avenue or whatnot. He knows which way to go.
He knows the grid. He, like every other New Yorker, gets a little lost in the West Village, so it's good.
He knows where the rivers are and which ones are which, and on and on. So, but he does know the tunnels, and that is a good point. Wondering how he gets around. It's kind of surprising to me that he doesn't just take the trains, period. And he's kind of on and off of them in this episode, but he knows the ways of the mole people.
I think when you have the ability to ride a train by grabbing it on the side and just flapping in the breeze, I think that's the preferable way to take the train, in New York at least.
You probably don't have a Metro card or anything like that.
He doesn't need a Metro card. He's a vampire.
Yeah, so he's a Nazi vampire.
So he tries to say, like, listen, Jimbo, you've got one shot at just taking me to Abraham, and if you do that, your wife will be fine, and if you don't, not going to be very good. And Jim says, don't threaten me, there's cops over there, which is a great threat against a vampire. And then Eichhorst is not having it anymore, and he says, well, I guess you made your decision. Consider your wife dead. And I'm going to take that to heart. I'm going to just go ahead and assume Jim's wife is toast now.
Yeah, that's no good, and it's sad, but it is absolutely what I believe is going to happen. So
yeah, it doesn't seem like it'll be okay for her.
Guy had the control to put her in the study. They pulled a bunch of strings to get her in and out of the things they wanted. So I think they could probably kill her with the drop of a hat.
Doesn't seem like it would be too difficult. It turns out what is difficult is tracking Eichhorst through Grand Central Station, because F and Nora, they are no good at this, and Abraham can't really find him either. And F and Nora track him into the tunnels, but they lose him there, and they run into Jim there, which was kind of a weirdly paced scene, I thought. But then Eichhorst shows up and has his big battle against Abraham, or what could have been a big battle if Abraham wasn't, 130 years old.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. The guy's got heart problems. He's a little bit weak. He does make some good swipes at him, and this is your House of Cards moment. We have two key characters meeting on a train platform, and a train could come by at any moment, and you wonder if that's going to be a train that's kind of hanging over what's happening, or I don't want to get too far into it, but there's definitely some kind of clandestine subway platform meeting that's happening here against or away from the eyes of others.
Yeah, deadly train platform meetings is in the zeitgeist right now.
I think that's right. So he says, I give you another day of life, Jew, for services rendered after he gets shot, because F and the crew come in just at the last moment as he's ready to kill Abraham. They shoot him in the leg. You see a little bit of that silver smoke rise off of his leg, and he kind of beats it. He takes a powder and turns tail, and then we get to your favorite shot.
Yeah, and then he turns around and runs up alongside the subway train, and he just jumps onto the subway train and digs his hands into the side of it and just rides it away like it's nothing, like it's a cartoon.
Phenomenal.
Phenomenal.
You only do that in a New York City where you don't have to worry about people taking pictures or video with their phones and sending it out, because this guy, that no matter if it's crazy shit happening every day in New York or not, this is going to raise some eyebrows, I think.
It's going to raise some eyebrows. It's also going to just make me laugh for about 5 minutes once that happens on screen. I was so tickled by this. I thought this was so amazing.
Yeah, it was like a Cloverfield, like Super 8 type thing where you've got some just kind of creature just latching onto a train. No big deal.
No big deal at all. It was really very funny. But anyway, so Eichhorst is free. I got to tell you, I'm very glad that he's out of there. Because I am so compelled by this character. I don't think that the show can afford to lose him right now, at least not until we get a little bit more of a face of evil in the form of the Master, which is one thing that the show is kind of holding back on us. But I was afraid that they were going to kill Eichhorst here. I thought that was kind of what they were driving at.
Yeah, I thought that might be, but the thing is, Eichhorst showed up willingly. He knew what he was getting into. So I just don't think he would have gotten into that if he didn't know he could get out of it. So he's a little more wily than all this. And I thought the for services rendered line when he says, "I give you one more day of life," was a good tie back to that flashback. Since he made the coffin, the service had been rendered there. So he gets one more day of life from I-Course for services rendered.
Yeah, it was good. It was a good moment, but now Jim's spot has been blown. I think that his ability to be undercover with Eichhorst is no more. They don't have Eichhorst, so they blew that plan. So I think it's time for another new plan.
Yeah, I don't know exactly. By the way, we had a comment on YouTube from Jeffrey Trotter wondering, were you doing your impression of Abraham there or Tom Brokaw?
Maybe it's kind of similar.
It's Abe Brokaw.
It's not bad.
So that it's an impression. It exists.
But it's good. It's good.
Yeah.
Now we have to figure out what the next step is. I hope that the next step is, hey, did you know that guy from Lost who came in on the freighter works as a rat exterminator now? What's called that guy?
Yeah, that has to be coming, and I think that
got to get that guy into the mix next week.
And we've got all these characters floating around out there. We've got Gus. We've got
time to put them together.
We've got Kevin Durant, just the silly fat, just wandering around, and it's time to put them together. It's time to bring the band together, and their plan. This is a kind of a ham-handed, like weird Hail Mary type play to get to the master through I-Course. That I-Course sniffed it out from the jump, so they're going to have to be a little more creative. They're going to have to kill their way to the top, I think, and they're just going to have to really do some business here.
Well, let's get to the ending of this episode. I think we can yada yada through most of what happens in the Luss household. It's just another one of those horror movie moments. And the Luss kids come home. They find Chief is on the ground, and he doesn't look like he's dead yet, right?
He doesn't look like he's dead. He's kind of breathing and shaking, but he's going to get taken over by the virus, so he's dead to us for all intents and purposes.
Yeah, I think he's gone. This is a good one-off for Aaron Douglas. Nice to see him on the show for a minute. But he's probably toast. And Joan Luss corners the babysitter and the babysitter's daughter, who also gets a little bit of a nick on the hand when she's dealing with Joan. So there too, you're toast. That one is finished. And the two children, they go to the wine cellar, and Joan and a couple of other vampires start getting in, and then they're taken out by cold blade hands. And this is one of the best things that's ever happened in my life.
I don't even think that's hyperbole, and I'm not running down the things that have happened in your life. I'm sure there's been many amazing things.
It's not been a great life. It's been a mediocre life.
I don't think that's true, Josh. I don't think that's true. You didn't have to wear a palate expander. That's pretty great.
No, you're right. Yeah, it could have been worse.
Yeah, could have been worse. So, but yeah, this is in terms of the show's life, this is probably the best thing that's ever happened.
Oh, it's so good. It really is. It's just fantastic. And
we had a lot of viewers and a lot of people tuning in, wondering what is going on with these people.
I don't know. I have no idea. There's nothing I can add to the conversation other than what the hell. This is amazing. It's basically it's 24 meets the Strain. This is like the Jack Bauer vampire, and I am so excited. And he's also just like a weirdo. He's got these weird mannerisms about him.
Yeah, he's got those teeth we talked about. He's very kind of proper. Please come here. Yeah, we can. Oh, you look good. Yeah, turn around. Let me see. Yeah. So he's very. He
kind of looked like an Alice in Wonderland character. He looked like the hare. Or the White Rabbit, I guess.
Yeah, because he had those teeth, and he was like just kind of pale-skinned and wearing a hood, just kind of weird. And I mean, let's suss out what we know about this Death Squad, right? They had some kind of weapon that seemed like they were shooting darts, like almost like a nail gun that we've seen with Abraham, but it was obviously more high-powered than that because it did some real damage and clearly put the vampires down. We know that they appear to be vampires on their own, right? They're making the same noises and they have the same intonation to their voice. Are we on the same page there?
These seem like vampires.
I think so. They are standing a little bit in the light, but they've got their heads covered.
They're covered head to toe in gear so as not to get exposed to the light. So I think, based on the sound of them, based on the look of them, based on the fact that they're wearing head to toe armor to make sure that they are not damaged by sunlight, vampires. I think pretty clearly, and I also just think the idea of vampire hunting vampires is too amazing to resist.
Well, and there's your Blade connection, and that there are tropes. We've had people commenting on our YouTube pages, and very thankful for that, pointing out the various tropes throughout vampire lore, and some of the things like silver, for example, which in some vampire lore matters not, and in other vampire lore is a major deal. So there are tropes within vampire culture, and vampires hunting vampires is certainly one that we've seen expounded upon before, but this one was pretty sweet because this guy was weird. We said cold hands, cold blade hands. There's some element of how come this guy's not bad and evil like the other people that are like him? We don't know that. We don't know what his backstory is.
We need to know more about the nature of the vampires, right? Because some of them seem like zombies like The Walking Dead. Others of them seem super malevolent like Eichhorst, but seemingly has some semblance of control over himself and certainly shades of his former self. He seems to be pretty consistent with the character we know from the 1940s. So he's different from a lot of the monstrous vampires that we've seen, like the ones that took out the medical examiner, or the ones who Vasily Fett encountered in the subway system, or even the ones that are freshly turned, like Joan Luss or even Gabriel Bolivar. Those guys seem a little bit more zombie-like, though Bolivar seems like maybe he's got a little bit of something to him as well. I'm not sure. I'm kind of curious as to where that guy is. He's been missing for far too long, I think. But then now we've got these guys who also seem to be, like Eichhorst, they have some sort of command of themselves. At least this lead guy does, and seems to have a personality that's distinguishable from other vampires that we've met. But also they seem to have an agenda that runs completely counter to what we see from the Masters. So this is, I think, the Master is probably the top tier. Then you have Eichhorst on one, you have these vampire hunters on another, and you've got the monstrous vampires as a fourth. So we've seen kind of 4 different types of vampires at this point by my count.
Yeah, and this is where our Wigler Wigwatch ties in. When I mentioned earlier in the podcast here what Confucius Sun Tzu commented on our YouTube page, could there be a bald F on the Vampire Kill Squad one day, and could that be the end of Wigler's Wigwatch?
Hey, listen, I'd be for it.
Yeah.
I mean, the vampire hunting squad is pretty sick. So if it gives us the double whammy of F losing the wig, which I think would be good, though I would be partially out of a job, and also keeping him on the show, but as a badass vampire hunting vampire, yeah, I'd be down with that. That would be great.
Yeah, the thing about these guys, and what's interesting to me about them, because they do have that like Ezio Auditore, like Assassin's Creed type robe on, they seem to be fairly
Great pronunciation, Antonio.
Well, I am Italian. They seem to be well organized, and so I don't think this is a new thing. This is not like this ragtag bunch like F's people, like Abraham's people. They're not Keystone copping their way through Grand Central. These guys, not only that, but they came specifically to Joan's house for a reason. She is one of the 4 survivors. We know now that 3 of them are gone. And so she's high profile.
Are you surprised by that? Are you surprised that all 3 of them are gone at this point?
I'm sort of surprised, especially with Ansel, because we also got some characterization of his wife. I'm just kind of surprised they dismissed with them so quickly. Keep in mind, this is a TV show that was based on graphic novels that were based on actual novels. I'm sure that in every layer of those things, in the books and in the graphic novels, those characters were probably sussed out with their own mini arcs a little bit more. And so we wrap up in 1 or 2 episodes a story like Ansel, which is probably in the comics over several issues. So it doesn't surprise me in that regard that we're kind of speeding through some of the source material and killing people off quickly. That said, Joan seemed to be one that would stick around, our girl Terry Bauer. I don't know why she did it so quickly, but they clearly came to her house for a reason. So these people seem to, like Abraham, have an agenda and be organized, and I don't think these are new people. I don't think they just turned into vampires, found each other all within the last few days, and are now attacking. I think that they're probably from some previous inclination or some previous version of these vampires, and I think they're really ready to do this. They're not something that's just popping up. So we're going to, I think, get some really good backstory about these guys.
Are you a True Blood guy, or were you ever?
I'm not. I have not met my maker in that regard.
R.I.P. True Blood, which ended last night, met the true death. But there's an agency on True Blood called the Authority, which is basically like organized vampires, like vampire government. There's kingdoms throughout America that are run by vampires, and you see like vampire security guards and special ops characters. So this isn't the first time we're seeing something like that. I think that these characters had a lot more personality than a lot of the vampires we see in the Authority on True Blood. But I wonder if it's maybe something similar. What if we're going to find out that there is some organization to these vampires that has gone unnoticed by mankind? And what if these people? What if it's not in their best interest for the Master's plan to go forward, where everybody is under control of the vampires? Maybe this is some sort of organized group of vampires that's like, oh no, this guy being in the mix is not great for our business. We need to put a stop to this plague as quickly as we can.
Yeah, there's Muggles, and then there's Harry Potter and his crew, and then there's He Who Must Not Be Named.
Yes.
And so He Who Must Not Be Named is the Master here, and then there's this group of people and he's a Death Eater. He's someone in the Lucius Malfoy realm, or
and these guys work for the Ministry of Magic.
And they work for the Ministry of Magic. Yeah, they're the R's. So they're there to kind of root out this horrible thing. And at one point he says, in fact, about the girl, the leader, our boy Coldblade Hand, says she has been corrupted. Well, corrupted is a very interesting word in light of what you're saying, that there could be some strains of vampirism that are totally appropriate, livable. They do what they can to get by and subsist hand in hand with mankind in a normal way. And then there are these people like the Master who are really set on destroying mankind, and when they've been infected by the Master's particular strain, have been corrupted.
Yeah, maybe it matters who is doing the turning. You know, maybe it matters that the babysitter's daughter got infected by a vampire that was infected with the Master strain, versus had she been turned by one of the special ops guys, by Coldblade Hands. Maybe that would have made a difference.
Right. And the way viruses are, and this is getting back to the F thing, and Abraham's always talking about this with F. You know, he wants to talk to him about it on a science level, but yet this is not something logical. But it is a virus. It does progress. And as we know about viruses, they adapt and they change. And so it's very possible that what the Master's got is this highly lethal adapted form of some virus that existed that isn't as harmful in the other people, that clearly they still can't be exposed to sunlight, and they have some of these other issues, and yet they're not malevolent. They're not evil. They don't seek to destroy. They don't have a problem with coexisting. So it'll be interesting to see how all of that plays out for sure.
Antonio, we have to start wrapping up so that we can start talking about the leftovers. But if we have questions in from anybody who's been listening in, why don't you lay some on us and then just wrap us up whenever we're through.
Spicy Wasabi would like to know which character is least likely to do the Ice Bucket Challenge.
Who is least likely? Probably F, because he doesn't want his toupee to fall off.
Because that toupee is just going to slide right off.
Yeah, I think the wig will fall off and he'll be exposed.
I think Abraham would just reject it out of hand too. I don't care about charity. We don't have time at a time like this to be raising money or spending time making videos that you can't send. It's all part of the plan to distract. Yeah, so I don't think he'd be in on it at all. Now,
ALS won't matter when the vampire strain gets across America.
Exactly. And this is Tom Brokaw signing off.
Yes.
No, that is, you know, so I think he would really just reject it out of hand. He was already ripping on F for his truck. I don't think he likes things that are not in the norm and not in with his very particular interests. And so I don't think he would really be on about it. He thinks silver buckets were a waste of silver, and that would be no good. So that was an interesting question, I thought, from Spicy Wasabi.
Who is the most likely?
Probably Zach, F's son.
Yeah, maybe? He'd be good. That'd be a good video. I feel like also I would like to see Gus's ice.
I was going to say Gus and Felix. Felix is operating the camera. Just bubbling and stumbling through the whole thing. That would
I just feel like it would be intense. I feel like I wouldn't want to be challenged by Gus.
I'm here to punch out ALS. Yeah. I don't think anybody should have it. It's horrible. My mom has it. It's bad. I think it's a bad thing, and we should get rid of it. I made my donation, $800. I'm not going to say how I got it, and you should make your donation too. Go ahead and pour the ice over my head. Yeah, I can.
Doesn't even flinch when it happens.
Doesn't even flinch like Colin Kaepernick. He just like cold does not matter to him.
Ice cold.
Yeah, I think that could work. I
That'd
think
be
that
great.
could work. So other than that, we had some good observations about the color yellow popping up as a theme on this show. I don't know. I don't remember any yellow specifically from this episode, but I think that was from BP-1. I don't think it'll be interesting to pay attention to that going forward now that that's been observed. I don't know what this show may be doing with colors or anything like that. I haven't really noticed that. Have you?
No, I have not noticed it, but it's definitely something I'll keep an eye on going forward.
Yeah, and then I don't. We had some good comments, but nothing else is really in the form of a question. So everybody just wants to know who the hell the Vampire Kill Squad is, and we're on your team.
Well, that's what we want to know too, guys. So if you've got theories, if you've got jokey possibilities, anything you've got, anything you want to talk about with these guys, Antonio and I want to hear it. Use the hashtag Cold Blade Hands. That's going to be the hashtag for this week's episode of The Straindle Live, starring Olivia Pope as a vampire PR person. But I think that's going to do it for us here on The Strain Live. If you are interested in hearing what we have to say about last night's episode of The Leftovers, Antonio and I are about to start talking about that. If you guys are watching live and you want to watch alongside us for the next show, we'll tweet out the link from @PostShowRecaps. Antonio and I will also tweet out the links from our Twitter accounts. Antonio is @AC Mazzaro. That's 2 Z's, 1 R. I'm @RoundHoward, like Ron Howard, but rounder. And we will be back in a minute talking about The Leftovers. And we will be back next week talking about The Strain, which has just gotten so much more fun now that there are vampire hunting vampires. Wouldn't you say, Antonio?
By a power of 10.
It's amazing. It's amazing what that'll do. So that's going to do it for us, and we will talk to you guys again soon. Take care, everyone. Bye.